Hello everyone, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we have my April wrap-up. It has been a minute. I thought I came back almost 10 days ago, and I took another break. Like I mentioned before in the last video I did, I had like a reaction around my eye. I had eczema, still have eczema. I think it's the changing of the seasons. I don't know, lots of pollen. I've never been an allergy person, but maybe I do now. I don't know. But then I reacted to like my moisturizer, so we stripped back like everything that I've been using for facial moisturizing, and it was much better in the last few days. Like, I think I woke up this morning and like there's a little bit of redness potentially, but like nowhere near as much swelling and things as it has been. And it's always been like mild, like nothing super crazy, but just like weird reaction stuff. And then this last week or two, I've just been like so not wanting to film, and this was part of it, but also just my motivation tanked going into May. As you will see here, I had an amazing reading month in April. Like, we're gonna dive into it for sure. It was amazing, but I have not really been enjoying May. Part of it, I think, is I've had some DNFs and stuff, things that I should have DNF'd earlier and I just like didn't. And so like I really need to like get better about that, because it makes me sort of fall into a slump when I'm wanting to read something but knowing it's actually not my thing or not good or whatever it is. So yes, we're back. I have the next couple weeks like officially planned out, so we'll see how that goes. But we're trying to get back into it, I promise. So let's dive into my stats first, and then we will talk about all the books I read as well. Like I said before, I had an amazing reading month in April. April was the magical readathon. Hi. April was the magical readathon. I completed all of that as well. Hello, Elliot. She's gonna be hanging out back there. And I read a total of 12 books in April. Granted, one of them was a DNF, but besides that, it was my highest month for reading so far this year, which is amazing. And that translates over into page number as well, actually. Like, it's not just like I read a lot of like short things. No, I read a total of 3,955 pages. I almost hit 4,000 pages. Didn't quite make it there, but like, again, I was reading a lot in April. So May has not happened. We're over halfway through May right now, and it's not been as good, but April was amazing for that. Also, still keeping it amazing with my hours listened, I'm at 18.6 for April. Again, my average last year was like under 10 hours per month. And like my January was a little bit of an outlier. I had almost 30 hours, but the fact that I almost hit 20 this month was also crazy, because again, I would not normally expect me to have this many hours listened to. I did tandem read a couple books that we will talk about where I listened to it as well as physically read it. And so that did include some of my hours in there as well. But it was a great experience. So like I said, we'll talk about that. But so in general, I was doing a lot of reading. Let's go down to my averages. This year I've been tracking my average, like how many days does it take me to actually finish a book? And the number of this does get skewed a little bit when you consider the fact that I have a few things that like I should have DNF'd and I didn't. And so it's like I actively have been avoiding them for days until I finally am like, okay, I'm not doing it. Or like I read one chapter or so every couple days. Like, that's taking me longer to finish. So for the month of April, I'm at 4.8 days. So almost 5 days per book. Realistically, shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. But yeah, it's a little bit high. It's a little bit higher than my whole year average right now as well. Then I've also been tracking the average amount of pages per book, and what this actually means is how many pages I read per book, because again, this will get skewed a little bit with DNFs. So for the month of April, it was a 330 pages per book, which is actually pretty good. I do think I've been reading a lot more between 300 and 400 page books, but again, with that DNF that I had, that definitely skewed the number a little bit. This is higher than my yearly average right now so far, and that is because I've DNF'd more things. And I've read some like mangas and comics and things like that that does take the number down a little bit, but overall, that's fine. Okay, so now we're going to be moving into my reading method. This was a little bit all over the place this time because I did read 5 ebooks, 3 physical books, and 1 audiobook, but then I read 3 things where I tandem read them as audiobooks and physical / ebooks, because one of them I didn't own physically and had to get the ebook, and I did, I think, buy the ebook and then read it that way as well. So yeah, a little bit all over the board, but like I said, I've just been reading a lot. Let's go down to the genre. I read across 7 different genres this month, so I had 4 sci-fi, 2 romance, 2 horror, 1 thriller, 1 mystery, 1 classic, and 1 contemporary. As for the book format, 9 of them were novels and 3 were manga. As for indie or traditional, 11 of them were traditionally published and 1 was indie published. For how I got it, 3 of them are books that I bought this year in 2026, which is good. I would like to be reading a lot more of the things that I bought this year. 3 are things that I owned previous to this year, so they were on the TBR, which is also great. 3 of them were ARCs. 2 of them were rereads, and we will talk about those as well, and then 1 was a book that I borrowed from my library. As for the age category, this is actually looking pretty much like what I would expect. Not all months is what I would expect, but I did have 8 adult titles and 4 young adult titles. I do read more adult titles nowadays than I used to. I've been tracking the publication year. I will say my chart on this is screwed up a little bit because what I've been doing is I've been tracking books that released this year in 2026, books that released last year in 2025, books that released the year before that in 2024, just because I'm curious to see if I'm reading those recent things that I've gotten or anything like that. Then I have backlist books, which is everything else, and classics, which is things that I would consider classics. I don't usually read those. And the thing is, for some reason, when I'm putting things in the monthly spreadsheet, if I don't have enough of like the classic or backlist category in here, it'll only show the years, like 2026, 2024, 2025, that kind of stuff. So I did have to input like 1 extra classic for this category to even show up. So I have 2 listed here. It's not 2, it's 1. So basically I had 1 book that was a classic, 5 that were backlists, that's anything from 2023 up to what I consider a classic, 1 book from 2024, and then also 5 books from 2026. So again, only 1 classic instead of 2, but this is how I had to do it to get the chart to show up. And then a new thing that I've also been tracking for this year is where the author is from, like what country do they originate from. I had 2 different books this month that had dual authors, so I did end up putting extra spaces in there for that as well, so I could actually have every single author represented. And I also track this only once per year per author. So in this month, I did have an author that I read other times throughout the year. I made sure it showed up on this chart for the monthly stuff, but later in the yearly stats, we'll only see them represented once. But for this month, I had 3 authors from Australia, 4 from Japan, 1 from Canada, 3 from the United States, and 1 from England. Again, I love seeing the diversity. The Japan ones, some of those were manga, but 1 was also just a translated fiction, which is great. And then I think the only other thing that we have here for stats is my star rating. My average rating for the month is a 3.8. I would love for that to be higher, but it is currently higher than my average yearly total right now because of the other many DNFs and not so great books that I've read. So nothing to necessarily complain about, but I did have 1 DNF, which I labeled as a 1 star on this chart. When I DNF, unless it's something horrible, I don't usually rate it with a star rating. It's like no stars, but on my chart here, because for some reason I did not want to read it, it's a 1 star. I also had 1 2.5 star, which means not so great, 1 3.5, 6 4-stars, which was my biggest category this month, and 3 5-star reads. So again, like I said, not necessarily horrible. I wished it was a little bit better, but it's fine. So now we are gonna jump into the books that I actually read in the month, starting with the DNF and then moving up to my favorite book of the month. So the book that I DNF'd was Summer Suns by Lee Mandello. Now, this was a book that was supposed to count for my magical readathon TBR, which was, I had to have like people give me like 5 of their 5-star reads. So like I had just put a poll out on Instagram of people, give me your 5-star reads. And this was the one out of everything that I got from people that I had an ebook version of. I tried to read this back when it was coming out in like 2020, 2021, whatever it was, and I put it down. I picked it back up, started over this time. I got farther than I did before, but at the same time, I still put it down, and I did not want to keep reading it. This was one of those books that I was reading as an ebook, and I was reading it like in the waiting room while I was waiting for Elliot for her doing her OT and stuff like that. So I was doing it like once, sometimes twice a week, and outside of those settings, I really was just not wanting to pick it up. I DNF'd around 17%, which for this book was like 60 or 70 something pages. I could be off a little bit. This is just like what I'm remembering. And I think the thing for me is that this is not necessarily a bad book. I do think on Goodreads, it's showing as like, it's supposed to be horror. I didn't really get enough horror elements yet. It is supposed to be queer, which is fine. I love that usually, but it's showing up as like gothic. And I do think that they're trying for that sort of gothic atmosphere, creepy vibes. Like, yes, there was a little bit, but for me personally, there wasn't enough to compel me to want to pick the book up. I wasn't really caring about our main character. I wasn't really caring about his best friend who supposedly had committed suicide, and that was the reason our main character was at this place. They were supposed to go to college together, but his friend got there first, like an early admission type of thing. There's something to do with like ghost stories maybe, but again, nothing was really grabbing my attention. And for the fact that I had already tried this book once before, years ago, and I still just like did not find myself wanting to pick it up, like I was almost actively avoiding it, I just don't necessarily think this one is for me. I love the cover of it and everything, but yeah. Now we're gonna be moving on to my 2.5 star, which does mean that I don't think this book was necessarily good in my opinion, and I do feel bad about it because it is Space Oddities by Dorian Lane, and this is a book that I received from the author because I put in to be an ARC reader. I think I put in for it like a week before this book came out, and it took me a little bit longer to read it, but I did read it. And this is technically the 2nd book in a series. However, when I signed up and everything, when it was like, when they were looking for ARC readers, it said you do not have to read the first one in order to read this one. And based on what I read and the summary that I looked up of book 1 afterwards, I do actually think this is sort of a prequel to the first book. So that does make sense why they said you do not have to read the other one first. I wanted to like this one so much because it's sci-fi, and it's sci-fi in like an alien has come down to Earth and they look like a human now and they're trying to assimilate, but like things are weird and interesting. And then we also have this like barista who he is like sort of falling in love with, who doesn't know he's an alien, and they're dealing with some personal things in their life. Like I think it said like their grandmother had just passed away, and so we're dealing with alien stuff, but not alien stuff, and like cozy, like that's what I was sort of expecting from it. But I just don't think the vibes really lived up to that in my opinion. We have 2 main points of view, obviously. We have our alien named Adrian, and then we have our barista named Ellen, and there are no point of view labels in this book, so it was very hard for me to read personally. Technically, Adrian's point of view is 3rd person and Ellen's point of view is 1st person. But sometimes you would start reading a chapter and there's no like point of view pronouns. It's like it starts with a description or whatever it is. And so I would have no idea whose point of view I was reading. And I did definitely find that very hard to read personally. Occasionally, we also got a third point of view that was somebody else from the outside. But again, there are no freaking labels anywhere. And so that annoyed me a little bit too much. And then also we were supposed to get the sort of like slow burn romance of Adrian and Ellen. I don't think the book lived up to that. I really was looking for more of the connection. It's supposed to be slow burn, but I just really think it was a little bit too slow. Like, for that to be part of the reason I picked the book up and then not to really feel like it came to fruition, I was a little bit sad about that. I did love the fact that one of the characters is ADHD, and I believe Adrian is autistic, partly because he's an alien, but I think also partly because the author wanted him to have that identity. And so I love having a little bit more diversity in there. I just don't necessarily think the points of view were distinct enough that I could tell which is what. And so that was really throwing me off, like I said. But then also the way the story ends, I don't feel like we got a good conclusion. Like, we did have like the main sort of rising action and the climax, but then it's just like done. There was no explanation, no nothing else. And like, again, yes, technically this is a sequel, but a prequel to the first book. And so I'm assuming you're supposed to like jump right on into the first one. But with the way that this book ended, knowing that you were supposed to be allowed to read this by yourself without having previous knowledge of the first book, it ended so abruptly that like my point of view issues, and not necessarily writing issues, but like trying to figure that kind of stuff out, not having it be as cozy and romance as I was expecting to have a little bit of that in there, and then also being so abrupt to end, like that definitely took my rating down, because I was just like, I was okay with the book but not liking everything, and then I really just did not like how it ended. So like, I would be very curious about more from this author, but I had issues with this one, as you guys can see. Okay, now we're gonna be moving on to my 3.5 stars, which means it was better than just meh. But it is Anne of Ingleside by L.M. Montgomery. I am going to finish this series because my goal this year was to do like 1 book a month. I think I did like 3 books last month though, because I'm actually on number 6 in April, and I'm currently reading number 7 currently right now in May. But I think I might be over the Anne of Green Gables stuff. Book 1 and book 3 were my absolute favorite. The like epitome of Anne of Green Gables and like Anne as a character, and book 3 has a little bit of like romance with Gilbert and stuff. This one here, we are fully into Anne as a mom. She has like 5 kids and she's pregnant with her 6th. And that's not counting that one of the books earlier than this actually had like a stillborn baby type of situation. So keep that in mind. So she's had a lot of kids. I think my biggest issue with this series currently is that we go through a lot of time. Like Anne of Green Gables, she starts when she's like 11 and we go up until she's like 16, something like that. Like that's a lot of time, obviously. But then we also have time jumps in between the books sometimes. Like book 5 and then book 6, like book 5, she had 1 kid. She had just had 1 kid. Now she has 5 when we start the book. So like we've had at least 5-6 years jump in between the last book and this book. And we're just like entrenched in the motherhood, which I'm not necessarily opposed to, but in a way, we're hardly ever seeing Gilbert. We're not really in their relationship. We're following a lot of sort of shorter stories of the kids. And like, again, we met Anne when she was 11 in the first book, and so I understand wanting to maybe bring back the sort of childlike nature and everything, but I really wish we would slow down and have more details. Like, again, it's not bad, especially since I am listening to these on audiobook because they are classics, and even though they're pretty well written for me, like, I don't like the sort of like older English style classics. I don't like that language. This doesn't have that, obviously, but I just feel like what I loved about Anne of Green Gables is not necessarily the focus anymore. Like, yes, we have Anne, we have some of the people from her life, we have her kids. That's the main focus. And like, even the book that I'm reading now is really focused on her kids and her kids' friends. Like, again, it's not even necessarily about her kids anymore. So I'm going to finish this because I said I was going to this year. I do think, like I said, 3.5. They're on the better side of it's a book, because I'm not necessarily like disliking it, but at the same time, I think I'm a little bit over this series. Then we're going to be moving on to my bunch of 4-star reads. So the first one that we're going to be talking about is Doughnuts Under a Crescent Moon by Shio Usui. So this actually is what replaced Summer Suns in my Magical Readathon TBR. This is another one that I put a call out like the very last day of the month. It took me until the very last day of April to be like, I think I just need to DNF Summer Suns, like it wasn't gonna happen. So I put a call out on Instagram again for comics, graphic novels, manga, something that I could find somewhere to read that people loved. And so this is actually, I think this was the same person who recommended Summer Suns also recommended this one. And I gave it a full 4 stars. I do think this was a very solid first book. So this is going for the people's 5-star reads. And this is a Yuri romance, so female-female romance, sapphic romance, about a character who, I think they work at the same office building and there's donuts outside. I will 100% tell you, I gave this 4 stars. I thought it was a very solid start to the series. We didn't get a ton of romance yet, but I definitely want to see more. However, now that it's May 18th that I'm filming this, and I read this on like April 30th, I don't remember the details at all. I remember liking it. I remember knowing that it's going to be sapphic romance and wanting a little bit more from that. And I think there's only like 3 or 4 books in this series, so it should be very easy to get through. I borrowed this from my library as an ebook. I do want to go back and see if they have the rest of the volumes. I only looked up volume 1 in general, but a very good solid start for sure. I just have forgotten a lot of it, which is why it's the lowest rated 4-star right now. My next 4-star read is Statues by Junji Ito. I picked this up during my indie bookstore crawl, which I actually did in April, so I read something from that. I was very proud of myself. This is a new collection of short story horror stories in manga form by this author. He does this a lot, and again, I think it was pretty solid. There were some stories, especially near the beginning, that I was just like, oh, that's it, because he does leave it open-ended for a lot of the things, but I was just wishing for a little bit more. As we got further into it, we got into more of the body horror, grotesque nature. Statues, the main title one, was pretty good. My favorites were Town of Maps. I really liked that one. Very weird and creepy. And then the last one that was in here is called Suicide Note. It does deal with high school kids and like a suicide and things like that. But again, very, very creepy. And so I liked a lot more near the middle and end than I did at the beginning. Not my favorite short story collection by him, but again, like I said, very solid. My next 4 stars is another manga. It's going to be Honeybee and Lemon Balm Volume 1 by Jill Hashikura. So this is going to be a male-male romance. Very slow burn to start in the actual relationship, because we actually have 2 characters. One is like almost like a reformed gangster. He just got out of jail for being in the Yakuza type of situation. And he ends up helping this florist who he thinks is a female, who had fallen down or something. And he almost immediately is like insta-love with this florist. Finds out it's a guy. Still insta-love. And I love that fact. It's very sort of cute and cozy. Even though we have a character who is supposed to be like this gangster situation, he is not like as mean or things that you would think. I wanted a little bit more from this because we're also introduced to the florist person's brother and sister. And I think I just needed a little bit more details and like time for things to grow. But besides that, I'm loving the vibes, loving the art. I definitely want to read more in this series. The next 4-star that I have here is The Escape Game by Marissa Meyer and Tamara Moss. So again, this is one of those ones that 2 authors wrote, and this is YA, escape room type of situation. I really enjoyed this one. I did, again, want a little bit more from it. I think it's partly because it was YA, and the mystery wasn't 100% mysterious, but I think the vibes of it were pretty good. We're following, I think, was it 4 different characters as they're on this escape room type of show. And we start off at the very, very beginning knowing that there was a person murdered during, I think it's like season 4. People think her sister did it because her sister was also a contestant on season 4. But there's like no proof, no arrests, all this kind of stuff. Then we're jumping into the book in season 5, following 3 characters who then meet their 4th teammate, who happens to be the sister that people think murdered the other sister. But as they're going about this show, people start having hints and clues about this previous murder. Like somebody that is in the background of the show or something is sort of hinting that they know more than everybody else knows. And so these 4 characters, and we have points of view from all of them, are now having to figure out what all is going on. We have a lot of diversity, both with like people of color main characters, and we have like a trans character. I absolutely loved finding out about them, and like the show was cool. I think part of it is I think this would be better as an actual TV show or movie because they were describing a lot of escape room things, and I just feel like I would understand it better to see it. But I really had fun with it, and I would love more. They left it slightly open-ended, like everything concluded in the story, but they had like a hint of like there might be more to come. I would read more of this. My next 4-star is Strange Buildings by Uketsu. I read Strange Pictures and Strange Houses last year. Gave everything 4 stars, including this one. Technically, this is a sequel to Strange Houses. Basically, we have like a journalist in this one who is the same main character journalist from Strange Houses. Besides that, nothing else really connects. He just sets this up as like, because I wrote that other book, now there's people coming and giving him more floor plans and things like that. So you do not have to read that one to read this one. It's completely different that way. It's just like the same character. I really liked this one. 4 stars. It's like twice as thick as the other ones, and it's set up like a little bit more than half. I think you guys can sort of see there's like a line here. This first part is like, here's all the cases that we have. And this second part is his conclusions of how everything sort of fits together, because as you go, everything starts to come to like one major conclusion. I did like that this one didn't seem to have that sort of ableism element that the other 2 books did have. We do still have some diversity and disability representation and stuff in here, but it didn't seem as negative in connotation as the other ones, which I did appreciate. Again, it's just a 4-star because I sort of would need more for it to be like a new 5-star all-time favorite type of thing. However, I will say I read this in one sitting. Literally, could not put it down. So they're very addicting that way. I do think it helps to have pictures and things. This book, even though it looks huge, is very fast-paced and quick to read. Literally could not put it down. So take that as you will. This also, before I forget, was a prompt for the Magical Readathon. This was for the one that was like on a bestseller list. Before I picked this up, at the very beginning of April, I think it was on the bestseller list in March, as well as 1 or 2 weeks in April. I didn't get to it right away. I think I read it like the 2nd week of April, but it was on a bestseller list, like the New York Times bestseller list, so that counted. Then my last 4-star actually was also for my Magical Readathon TBR, and it was to read a book with a temperature word in the title. I only had like 2 total off my shelves. Like, this was a hard one to fill, but I read Hot Summer by Elle Everhart. I really, really enjoyed this one, but it was not quite a full 5 stars. So basically we have 2 characters here. Our main character is Cass, and then her love interest is Ada. We are 100% following Cass through this, and she is joining this TV show, this dating TV show that's very similar to like a Love Island type of situation at the behest of her employers, who is like a dating app. And she's not allowed to tell anybody about that, but she goes on for her job, ends up developing feelings. I absolutely love that. I love the fact that you go into a lot of these shows because they have tons of them nowadays. And yes, I do find myself watching them quite often. I love it. But they're very heteronormative. This, I love the fact that the show that they're technically on for this is sort of heteronormative, but in a way it's not, because we've had multiple contestants apparently previously that have ended up in LGBTQ couples, sapphic couples, Achillean couples. So there is a precedent for not necessarily having to pick an opposite gender person. Both of our main girls here are bi, so they do talk about that, but there is that precedent for having a sapphic couple, which I absolutely loved. I love the idea that it's not like a taboo thing on the show. It's allowed to happen. I loved their relationship. I loved the build-up and the development of it. I did wish for a little bit more from the friendships, because Cass is supposed to be like in a friendship couple at one point during the show, but we're just sort of like told about it. She's like, oh, he's my best friend, but like I really wanted to see them more together building that friendship. Some of my favorite romances actually have their friends as a major part of the story as well, so I was hoping for that a little bit more. And then I also think the ending, the like third act breakup, reunion, all that kind of stuff, again, I just wanted a little bit more from it. Like I knew it was coming and I sort of guessed how it was going to happen, but I needed a little bit more from it because it felt a little abrupt. However, if you love the like Love Island situation, the vibes of this, the show aspects of this, I think were like some of the best that I have ever seen in a book format. Like I would love to read things more like this. Like it was like that part was so good, and I loved our characters. So even though I had a little bit of things that I'm like nitpicking at, I still think it was really good. 4 stars. And then we are now officially to our 5-star reads, which all sort of go together. I did read some rereads because the last prompt that I had for the Magical Readathon was to read a reread. I had to read a book that I had read previously. And so I reread Illuminae and Gemina. These are from the Illuminae files by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I do want to read Obsidio as well. I just haven't gotten there yet. But I also read Memento, which was the prequel short story. I actually bought it as an ebook, so I have it because I don't think you could really get it physically, except for maybe as like a pre-order bonus way back in the day. I don't remember. But so Memento is the short story that's a prequel. I do think you should not read Memento until you read Illuminae, because it's sort of like the vibes of it. You should know about Illuminae and everything that happens in that first before you get into Memento. Even though it is a prequel, read it after. But so these are the books that I read as tandem reads. I read it physically, and I've read these many times before, but I also listened to the audiobook because it is a full cast audio. I have never done that before. It is so well done, so well produced. I do think you could get the entire story and be perfectly happy with the audio. However, there are parts of this story that I do think you should still read physically because of the visual nature of it. So even though the audiobooks were amazing, the characters, the people, the narrators, they were amazing, there are certain things that I think you do miss if you don't read it physically. So like there is a part where many people die, and we have multiple pages of names. They obviously did not read every single name. The way they did it was interesting, but I think the gut punch that you get in this book, having to turn multiple pages of names and multiple pages of pictures of dead people, it hits different. There is also some stuff near the end that is a little bit different graphic-wise, and it's very hard to translate bouncing into just auditory. So again, I think the visual nature was better that way. There is a different part though that I think the book actually did better as an audiobook. And I'm going to give you an example from Gemina, because I think I actually did it a couple times in Gemina compared to Illuminae, which is like these kind of things where it's almost like just walls of text, different size text, but text on the page. And there's no like, here's where you should read first, because they sort of like, here's one character stuff, but then it could be here or a longer, skinnier piece of another character's. And so they did a lot of overlapping of the audio, and I think that worked very well. But then also in Gemina, we actually have journal entries with drawings. They did their best for translating, but like we actually have drawings. So again, there are just certain things about the series that I think physically is better. I still want to read Obsidio. There was no extra special journals or anything like that in Memento, so that was easier to read as an audiobook. It's so well done, so well produced. I'm glad I did it this way because I've heard for years that people should listen to the audiobook, but I think it should be audiobook as well as reading the physical books, not instead of necessarily. So these are 5 stars. I gave all 3 of them 5 stars. Memento is the only one that's new, but it is a novella. It's very short. If I had to choose, I think Illuminae is still my favorite, but Gemina is like right up there because they both have like twists and turns and things that you don't see coming. And even after I know what the plot is, it still gets me in my feels every single time because the way that this is set up, the way that the books are written, so good. Like this is one of my favorite series of all time. It's just so good. So I do need to read Obsidio. I'm gonna try and do it this month, I think, even though we only have like half a month left and I'm so behind on just reading in general because it was not my priority. But that is everything from me today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, I've already planned out the next couple weeks of stuff, so I should be getting back on schedule. I'm sorry that I have been off schedule for a little while. But if you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos. I do have videos coming out Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, I promise. So I will see you then. Bye.